Welcome to this podcast in a series developed by the Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association. NJJA is a 501c3 not-for-profit public benefit association. The mission of NJJA is to improve services to youth in the juvenile justice system by serving as a resource for collaboration, leadership development, and education for juvenile justice system professionals and interested stakeholders. Our efforts are greatly enhanced with the generous support of the Sherwood Foundation. Please visit our website at njja.org to see a list of upcoming podcasts, as well as the opportunity to revisit those podcasts previously recorded. We welcome your thoughts as to potential podcast topics and interest. Welcome to the Juvenile Justice in Nebraska podcast, produced by the Nebraska Juvenile Justice Association.
Tony, we're excited to have you on. I think this is episode 21. Super jazzed that we've made it this far. I think we started podcasting maybe, a year and a half ago, and we really ramped those up. So excited to have you on today, Tony, for a number of reasons. One, your story is amazing. I've been able to go and watch some of your YouTube clips and things like that. Awesome. Congratulations for everything. It's such a cool story.
Thank you. It was, it's been a wild journey living on both sides of what you've looked up and probably heard about.
Sure. And I want to do my best today because we want to learn about you, Tony. We want to understand who you are, your background, but I also don't want to give away too much information as you are going to be one of our keynote speakers come May 2023 in Kearney at our conference. So it's kind of a fine line there, but we're super jazzed to have you on today. Super excited to get you into Kearney and all that good stuff. So, first off, Tony, just kind of tell us about yourself.
Yeah, so I grew up in the middle of California. I'm now stationed in Dallas, Texas. That's where I've been for the last 2 years. I was an athlete. Usually that's what I tell people. My identification with community starting when I was young was through sports. I was a uniquely gifted athlete in all sports that I played. My first dream was to go to the NBA, and so I pursued basketball up until about 12 years old when my mental health struggles started. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I had no idea what I was struggling with. I just knew that I was struggling with something, and I didn't like what I felt that I was feeling at that time. But, I grew up in a family. Mom and dad have been married for 47 years. They moved from Southern California to Fresno, California, and then to a city called Clovis. So me and my brother could receive a good education through Clovis Unified, which at the time was one of the most distinguished public schools in the United States.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting already for me because, you tell me you struggled with your mental health as early as, you said 12 or 14?
12.
12.
12 years old, yeah.
But you grew up in a great household. Your parents sounds like they were there and they were present and for all intents and purposes, the quintessential mom and dad.
Sure.
So much stigma goes around. Kids have mental health issues because of one parent households or trauma as they grow up. But your story right there kind of is indicating that's not always the case.
Yeah, well, and you would think that, right? What I try to really bring to people when I give my speeches is help understand what trauma looks like, right? Trauma is not always somebody being sexually abused, somebody physically abused, or directly verbally abused. My parents were workaholics, and so they were gone for 14 hours a day. I was raised by my babysitter, Vera, who was an amazing individual, and she helped bring stability to our house. But there are also forms of trauma in which children are growing up in high expectations, right? The family has high expectations for the way that they should be performing, whether it's in the house, in school, and in their communities. It's not uncommon for me to talk to a 14-year-old who has to be the best softball player, the prettiest girl in school, be involved in church, and do these other things that the family wants. And she feels like she's completely crumbling under these expectations, right? Mm-hmm. And so individuals oftentimes can start to experience anxiety disorders or low-level anxiety disorders as a result of high expectations. What I've learned is nobody's household is perfect, right? Growing up under the typical boomer household, we were told to be on our best behavior when we left the house and to not bring shame to the house. And the house didn't talk about what was happening outside of the house. That was kind of the order of the day for the community that I grew up in, which is a lot of the work that's trying to be undone in communities across the country, right, is we try to provide services and we try to break stigmas and start communication, because no family's perfect. It doesn't matter who you are. You have high expectations, no expectations, single family households. You have completely broken households where the grandmother and grandfather are raising a kid. Every type of situation creates a certain type of psyche and outcome or an expected behavior. And for my house, while my parents have been married and modeled what I would believe is a very functioning marriage, there was a component in which they were over involved in their workplace. My brother and I weren't looked after emotionally. We didn't receive the emotional training to become emotionally aware of ourselves, which really is the coping skill of understanding how to process events as they come to you, right? And in that situation for myself, that really is what led to this place where I had to try and figure out how to process it on my own, which is a very dangerous place for a young person to be, because a young person has the undeveloped mind. They aren't able to cognitively understand what they're experiencing, why they're experiencing, and then how to navigate it. So what we find is individuals start creating improper use of instinct. And that's really where it all started for me, 12 years old.
Yeah. And a lot of times parents often think when kids get to that middle school, high school age, they can back off a little bit. But when realistically, in my opinion, that's when kids need their parents even more. They need to continue to guide and support, even though what the kids seem to be independent and want to be left alone.
Sure. And it's a safe space, right? As parents are trying to, what I would say, and I'm not a parent, so I can't speak directly from the position of a parent. I never would do that. But I would see parenting, the goal is to help a young person navigate who they are, help them figure out who they are, and then as they're navigating these experiences, have the confidence that there is a huddle or a safe space in which communication is openly encouraged. And then while that communication is actually being done, that the parents are the coaches that are up at the top of the arena watching the game, right? This is what we do in this type of situation. That's okay. We get to go back out there. There's another down, and we get to try and do this again. And while I do believe that freedom and empowerment should be given through that process, you definitely don't want to let a youth out in the open on their own without some type of navigation and help in that safe space continuing.
Yeah. It's funny. I shouldn't say it's funny, but, I'm sitting here right next to Tammy, and I can feel this excitement of this conversation happening because she's a clinician by trade. So I can just tell how excited she is to hear what you're saying. And it's just kind of neat to be a part of this conversation.
This is why the professional audience is my biggest audience. A lot of times people think I'm a school speaker, or they don't think I speak to schools because they start to see, okay, he's the TEDx speaker. He's engaged with healthcare organizations, medical professionals. It's usually one or the other, but the professional audience is my number one, because it's extremely difficult to bring a person with lived experience like I have, but also articulate a very methodical clinical approach of the psyche and how behavior becomes what it is, and kind of have that balance.
Sure. Tony, let's kind of move ahead a little bit.
Sure.
Again, I don't want you to give away too much. I want you to save it. I want to hear it, firsthand. But let's kind of move forward a little bit. You mentioned you moved at about 12 or 14 years of age. You went to another town to go to school. You had some mental health issues which you were working on. What happened next? I mean, because you have a lifetime of stories, Tony. I realize that we're not going to get through it in 15, 20 minutes.
Sure.
But I just kind of give everybody a little taste of what they're going to hear.
Yeah. So sports really was my savior through school. I think the reason that I never totally self-destructed was because I had one of two things that I tell people that they need. And that's one, a safe space to have a conversation, and two, is an activity that connects you with like-minded individuals. I had the activity that was connecting me with like-minded individuals, that was kind of releasing some of the emotional pressure through 12 to 18. And so even though I had high suicidal ideation and anxiety and depression struggles, my connection to BMX, which is the sport that I was featured on the cover of a magazine and endorsed by very big, large corporations by the age of 18, was really kind of my saving grace. But it was when I let go of the sport that the true unraveling of self started to show up. And it really was. The early signs of 12-year-olds were there, that if something dramatic doesn't change in my approach to coping with experiences, doesn't show up, I'm not going to be able to manage adulthood. And that's really where I got into my senior year of high school. I wouldn't say that peer pressure looked like what they told you it was going to look like when I was a kid, which some big bully was going to show up with a joint and make you smoke it.
Sure.
It was an emotional process in which I watched all of my friends start navigating this direction. And I had one of two choices: be alone and cope with that experience, or give in and do what my friends do and remake a connection through a like-minded experience that wasn't empowering for me or them. And that was when substance use started. Mm-hmm. There was never this idea that I was going to become homeless, commit crimes. It was something for me to do to engage with my peers. But I wasn't getting relief from those substances until I found Oxycontin. And when I found Oxycontin, that was when I found out the power of substances, and when a person finds relief from that substance, really what happens to their behavior.
It's interesting because you make the comment about like-minded individuals. Everybody, it's a universal need that everybody wants to be connected. They want to feel belonged. And I think sometimes in our society, we have a lot of parents thinking that their kids have to be the starter on the basketball team, or they shouldn't play at all, or they need to be able to be the lead role in the play, or backstage isn't good enough. But what we're not realizing is kids want to be a part of something, no matter what role they play. They might be the kid sitting on the bench, but as long as they're part of that team, that's all that matters to some kids. And I think we forget about that. So I really like your comment about the like-minded individuals. Of how do you surround yourself with people with the same interest, no matter kind of what role you play within that team.
Yeah, I would consider it groundedness within your environment, as long as it's conducive or healthy for self and others. And so you can be the water boy and feel no different than the quarterback does, so long as the perspective is correctly grounded in that I'm a part of this team. Mm-hmm. I tell kids, if you have a dream to make it to the NFL, you don't have to play in the NFL, because imagine if you were wrapping Tom Brady's ankles before he took the game, right? Or what did the quarterback for the Chiefs say after the game? He posted a picture of a lady. And what did that lady do? She worked on his ankles for a week before that event. And he said if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have been able to do what he does. She made it to the NFL. She is a part of the NFL, even though she doesn't take the field. Is how do we ground individuals in the perspective of, so long as you're a part of that team or community, your role is no different or better than or worse than anybody else. So that to me, that's like-minded individuals. So long as it's empowering for self and others is key. Community is key.
Yeah. So Tony, you developed some substance abuse issues, when you're in high school.
18 years old.
18 years old, specifically Oxycontin. And then from there, did it kind of trickle on, or was Oxy your choice?
Of course. But that when I took Oxycontin, I felt safe for the first time. I felt a part of something for the first time. My anxiety, depression, my suicidal ideation went away. Social anxiety went away. And so I felt that I had found subconsciously, this is before 10 years of therapy and understanding kind of this journey that's brought me here. I felt at that time that everything I needed was wrapped up in this green pill. So long as I had that green pill, I was okay. And obviously, as I was, moving further and closer towards these substances, it was cocaine, crack cocaine, methamphetamine. But while none of those drugs made me feel like opioids did, I was, heavily engaging in those things. But the crime, my home invasion crime, was committed behind opioids. I went inside a house that we knew had Oxycontin in it. It was one of our friends' mothers. I tell people the biggest mistake I made. But the withdrawals were so powerful from the opioids that it seemed like a better idea to commit the robbery than to have to go through with the physical pain that the withdrawals would bring. And that was by 21. And 2 years after that, I was sleeping on the street, the street.
Mm-hmm. And this is kind of more, this is a personal thing for me, Tony, is I get the opportunity of serving as president for an agency here in Lincoln called the Bridge Behavioral Health. And what the Bridge Behavioral Health is it's a program for men predominantly men who suffer from addictive personalities, who are going through addiction. And the opiate pandemic right now is something that we're seeing throughout, the state of Nebraska. I'm sure you're seeing it out there. But your story is becoming way too common. And, it's one of those things. It feels great to be a part of an institution like the Bridge, who is trying to give back, trying to help, people pull themselves out of that. But if somebody's struggling with this process right now, Tony, what would your advice be to someone like that?
So I just did a group at my treatment center in Southern California, and I talked about change. And I said there's 3 aspects to change. The first one is acceptance. The second one is action. And the third one is adaptability. Part of acceptance is surrender. An individual has to accept that the position and the outcomes in their life are not working, right? You have to surrender the way you think, the way you speak, the places you go, the friends you have, the things you do. All of this stuff needs to be surrendered. And then you come into play, right? They show up at your doorstep. They show up at your organization. When they have accepted and surrendered, you now become the ultimate authority of their thinking, their doing, and the way that they choose to do things. That's it. We'll listen to you because listening to me doesn't work, right? It's the full surrender of the way they do things to then the action of way you say they should do things and then doing them. And then third part is the adaptability, right? Is your ability to have to change directions, your ability to go out and try and get a job with a felony and not get it and adapt to the truth that we know that you may not get a job right away. Your marriage may fall apart. You may not have a place to stay right away. You may have these situations in your life that come at you in which you are challenged to adapt to that situation in a split second. But that's why community is important, right? Is because when we're around like-minded individuals that are empowering for self and others, when we feel like things are falling apart, which many of us that struggle with addiction have been feeling since we were young, you can come in and say, everything is going to work itself out. This is what I want you to try doing instead of using. Pick up the phone and call somebody, go to a meeting, get to a church service, get back to your ministry work or giving back to the community and the things that you've been doing. And let's see how this plays out over the next day, over the next 2 days, right? Is try waiting it out and see what happens. But you have to start with surrender and acceptance that the situation you're in is not working.
Wow. That was great to hear. That's a tremendous explanation there, Tony. Thank you for that. So in your story, we were at the home invasion. You committed that, obviously. Is that what you were charged with, and then found guilty of, and ultimately had to do some prison time? Correct?
Yeah, in 2004, I committed the crime. In 2005, I was arrested for it. There was obviously some privileges that came to play. My parents had money to get me a top attorney in California. Showed up to court from the good side of town. Hey, we don't want to give this guy prison. Let's try and give him a chance, which is kind of a different outlook on some other individuals that may come into court with something very similar to me.
Sure.
But that didn't stop. Right. I thought that I could just stop because I didn't want to go to prison for 10 years. That was it. If you come back to the court, you're going to prison for 10 years. Well, I went to a treatment center for 90 days that I was sentenced to, 5 years felony probation. And at that time, drug programs were go to meetings and bring us your meeting cards. Right. Yeah. This is early 2000s. We just didn't know enough about this. It didn't work because I wasn't ready. I didn't accept that what I was doing wasn't working, but I also didn't understand that I was a person that struggled with addiction. At that time, I didn't want to believe that I was different. Me believing I was different felt like I was never going to be okay, which is already what I felt anyway. So by 2005, I get out of rehab in August, and 30 days later, I'm drinking, and I get in a fight. I end up in the hospital. I get prescribed pain medication, and I'm off to the races again. And then over the next 2 years, it was out of control. You couldn't stop me. I had to be arrested. I see both sides of the modern climate when it comes to arrests and rehabilitation, right? But I have told parents that are really far on the progressive side, like love, 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 love. We just have to love people out of this. I agree. But like I told her, I would have sold drugs out of your house, and there would have been guns, and there would have been people that were, they had no care for you or your safety. And the SWAT team would have came into your house if you were just going to love this out of me, because my care for the world had reached an ultimate low to where there was, who cares, right? I'm going to go to prison or I'm going to die. I needed to be arrested to get to where I was at today. For me specifically, I had to be arrested because I couldn't do it on my own. I would volunteer to go to a detox, and I would volunteer to leave. Mm-hmm. I had to be put in a place where when the cell door closed, the only person that could open it was 100 feet away in a tower. Mm-hmm. I needed that forced sobriety. Sure. And once I got that forced sobriety, go ahead.
Did you go through your withdrawal process in prison then, or did you get some professional treatment for that? Because of course, like you said, the withdrawal was awful. Back
then, there was nothing. I thought that if I told them that I was on heroin when I got arrested, finally in January 22nd, 2007, that they would put me on a methadone taper, and they actually charged me with another felony for admitting that I was on heroin. And the only thing they gave me was 16 ibuprofens. And the lady said, I guess you'll think differently about the choices you were making. Yeah. I had to crawl to court 4 days later.
Jeez.
I couldn't even, I was so bad, vomiting and diarrhea and the pain. Like I was, I could get like 5-10 steps in and then I would just be in so much pain. Like I just remember like dropping down, going through this little tunnel, the court. And then I ended up waiting there for, the whole day because they thought that this top dog attorney was going to show up again because he was my representation last time. So they're waiting for him. And at the end of the day, I'm thinking, why am I the last person? Like, I can't do this. They're like, hey, is Mike Idiart showing up? And I'm like, no, I don't have him as an attorney. My parents are not helping me anymore. So then they quickly assigned me a public defender. For the first 90 days, I don't know that I got a full night's sleep. Yeah. It was just sweating it out.
Toda, I definitely don't want you to think that we're trying to push this through because of anything other than time. I want to be respectful of your time, and I want to be respectful of everybody else's time. But okay, so you went to prison. You had the struggle with withdrawals. How much time did you end up doing?
2 years.
You did 2 years. Mm-hmm. 2 years, and then what was it like getting out? And then kind of maybe just walk us through how you got to where you are today, Tony.
Yeah. So being forced to I was on 23.5-hour lockdown. So in California, in the beginning, they house you based on your crime, and so I had to go to a high-end facility where assault with deadly weapons, murders, attempted murders. So I was on 23.5-hour lockdown, which was great because it gave me the sobriety that I needed to begin kind of have this clarity. I had a spiritual experience January 21st, 2007, the day before I was arrested. And I started to pursue this spiritual experience because I felt like the answers may be on the other end of this experience. And that was really when I started to realize that I don't think I went through everything that I went through for nothing. And that I was, feeling this calling to do these 4 things that I was in there: race my bike professionally, go back to what I was gifted at, go to the Olympics, create a stage where people would listen to the message that I had, start a nonprofit organization for kids, which was my way to give back to community with the gifts that I was given, and to become a public speaker. My ability to change the hearts and minds of those that were listening to me and the experiences that I had, because I came from a community and family in which people didn't think stuff like what happened to me would happen, right? Is like you said, it sounds like everything you had in the beginning was there. Well, yeah, that was the belief, right? Is if you came from the other side of the tracks and you had that family support, this couldn't happen to you. The DARE program really helped program that it were these specific drugs that made people addicts or struggle with addiction rather, and that it wasn't from the other side of the tracks that looked like me. And so when I was in there, I realized I had no ability to carry out any type of day-to-day responsibilities. I couldn't brush my teeth every day. I couldn't get up in the morning. Oddly, I had an 8x12 prison cell and I could lose things. Like, how do you lose things in an 8x12 cell? Like, you have to be completely not paying attention to what you're doing or intentional with your behavior to lose things in a cell. And so I started to realize that I could reshape my life by starting to learn how to do one thing that I couldn't do, and that was brush my teeth every day. Then I learned how to make my bed, and I learned how to organize all my stuff, stop losing things, start putting everything in the same space. Then I started training for the Olympics, even though I wasn't in there, because I believed that if I told myself what I told myself when I went to rehab as a court-ordered inmate, that I'll change when I get out. That didn't work. So I can't actually do that. Now I need to change while I'm in here. I have 2 years, not very much time to recalibrate all of these daily habits, but then also recalibrate all of the misuse of instinct, which is, I can't trust anybody. I'm all alone. I'm not going to be okay. These emotional things, right? And so for 2 years, I really spent this time emotionally grounding myself through my faith in Christ and reestablishing myself as somebody that was capable of carrying out very small things, which I believed would then turn into these bigger things. So when I got out, I was a completely different person. People would see me. I remember one time I saw this girl at Starbucks, and she was with her boyfriend. And she was like, "Oh, this is the guy I was telling you about." I'm talking to him. I just finished reading the Bible, studying at Starbucks like I was doing every day at that time. And she like looked at him and she was like, "This guy is nothing like I told you. He's not the same person anymore." And I remember walking away from there smiling, thinking, whoa, that was weird. Because she probably had all of these stories that confirmed I was this drug dealing guy that went to prison, did this robbery, and then she sees him. And now the way he communicates and does things is not the person that she used to know. And, I got right into everything I said I was going to do. Started racing my bike. That didn't work out, although I made it to the highest level. Ended up starting a nonprofit, becoming a speaker, obviously, now own a treatment center. And it's been a journey of continuing what I started while I was in prison, here today, many years later.
Yeah. Tony, I mean, your story is amazing. And like I said, hearing it from you firsthand, Zoom hand, I guess we'll call it, as opposed to just seeing what you've done on your TED Talks and your other engagements that you have online. It's just an amazing story. Congratulations to you and everything that you've been able to accomplish. We're so excited to have you, in May in Kearney. Do you have anything before we kind of start wrapping up here?
No,
could be anything. I'm an open book.
Excuse me?
I'm an open book. I just love sharing anything I may have.
Listening to your story, this of course really ages me, but there's the movie The Breakfast Club. And I know when I used to do a anger management group with some middle school kids, I would always have them watch that movie. We would watch that movie together. Of course, This has been years ago, with the edited version. But it really helped kids understand that no matter where you came from, every kid, even though they look good on the outside, may be experiencing problems behind closed doors. And, when you share with how you were raised and what the environment you grew up in, it's very much kind of that story.
Yeah, it really is. There was a girl that we knew that we went to school with who went to Europe to be a model. And we consider her family like perfect. They all drove nice cars, lived in a big house. The kids were talented and good looking. And then we came to find out in our adulthood that mom would hide under her bed, and that he would beat mom up. Dad would beat mom up on a daily basis. And that those kids all struggled with anxiety because of the anger issues that dad had. And it's, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. I always tell kids when I'm speaking to kids, every person in here's got something, including the staff that are around this room.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're excited to have you. I'm most definitely excited to have you.
Breakfast Club, March 25th, 1984. That's the date on the very first scene. I remember. Yeah. So.
See, Rico remembers it too. So.
Yeah, I do too. It was, it's my parents. My parents watched that movie. It's like, Back to School and
Oh yeah,
Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Those boomer classics is what I call them.
yeah.
Yeah. For those of you listening, if you've never seen The Breakfast Club,
Check it out.
go to your local library and go get that movie and watch it.
Yeah. I'm really excited to be with y'all.
Good.
If you enjoy it over Zoom, I promise you what I bring in person is even more powerful. It really gives me an opportunity to relive a lot of those emotions and experiences for people to feel, because that's what's important to me.
Sure.
Feel
Have you been to Nebraska before?
Of course.
Okay.
Of course. Many times. Many times. I've done a lot of stuff with the youth around the four corners of Nebraska. The behavioral health organizations on the substance use side have been big supporters of what I've been doing since 2015. So I'm always grateful to be back. You guys are so gracious to me, and I love being with you all.
Good. Well, I tell you what, Tony, we're excited to have you. May
3rd, 4th, and
5th. I'm glad I have them. I can't do it. So May. Okay, May 4th,
5th, 3rd.
May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. I know, Tony. Don't laugh, Tony.
That's all right.
But registration will be opening up probably when this podcast drops. So if not, very soon. Looking forward to that. Get signed up. We're still looking for sponsors. Still looking for exhibits. So check it out. But most importantly, sign up. Come check out Tony. Our other couple of keynote speakers are going to be fantastic as well. We're looking forward to it, and it's going to be an awesome conference again this year.
Y'all are amazing. I'll see you soon. Thank you so much.
Man. Appreciate you.
See ya.
Yes. Bye.
Bye-bye.